I think I'll kick off with the first question. So there's some really good recommendations coming out of both reports, especially, there seems to be good alliance there with regards to the recommendation around a catapult. And I'm keen to understand the panel's view on how you would take these forward. So in simple terms, what do we do next? What's the next step? I don't know if Eddie, Rob, Paul, if you want to have your views on that.
I could maybe just start with that. I suppose in the context of the innovative centre, we've already actually embarked on that with this new City Deal support with Invest NI process of delivering a hydrogen centre of excellence. That innovative centre, it's an evolving structure, to be fair, but we see the need to move quickly on it. So it's not about creating something new. So that's why we're basing off AMEC and the I4C and the innovative structures are already developing. That's the best way to leverage this quickly. Paul, whether you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think this one, we need to go and physically look at the evidence again. I think the steer that we get from the department is that something is needed. We all agree on this. The question is, how can we have the highest impact quickly? Industry clearly, as you see, needs something tomorrow, ideally. Are there any assets, any capabilities we can actually go back and use tomorrow, again, from centres that we have available in Northern Ireland? How can we collaborate between the two universities? How can we get all the ecosystem integrated? It would be so nice. We're a small place. We need to make sure we all work together on this. And for me, how can we build on the capability that the city deals have physically allowed us to create? And there is an example that I have physically shared with Eddie. Sheffield University, in the year around, must have been 2000, they created the AMRC, Advanced Manufacturing Research Centre. 6 years after, the government said to them, we're very interested in nuclear. What can you do? And they physically created a proposal to create a nuclear AMRC using the previous capability as an underpinning bedrock and physically building capability on nuclear. This analogy can work here. We can see what we have in tech, making stuff, measuring, supply chain, all this knowledge, and build specific capability in the areas of hydrogen that we want to advance. And this for us can be a fast acceleration then, using the assets and the knowledge in a holistic way with the fastest possible deployment. So this is perhaps a route, but I don't want to preempt it. I want to make sure that we have proper due diligence and open book. The fact that the recommendation for the catapult comes from Frontier Economics is really good, because clearly for us it's good for somebody else to say, actually you have a chance here to do something. And I think that's why the two reports coming together, Rob. I don't know if you want to add anything.
No, I think, the evidence is emerging. It's very clear. I think, the foundation we have with the investment we've already made in the City Deal and AMIC provides a foundation. The work in Mid and East Antrim provides a foundation. I don't think there needs much more evidence to justify further investment. But I would stress that the window of opportunities is open now, right? And it won't be open forever. There are folk beavering away in Bavaria who want to steal the sandwiches off the table, and I wouldn't like to see that happen from a Northern Irish perspective. So I would be very much behind investment in a catapult. Yes, we have to go through the diligence process, but let's not waste too much time pontificating over whether it's justified. I think we've seen the evidence. There's a global need. Let's take advantage of it.
Thanks. Thank you. Are there any thoughts from the floor? Do we have a question here? Thank you.
Thank you. Emma Kelly from Turley. So I'm from planning consultancy. So my question is more focused on the regulatory systems. And it is good to hear that all of the reports have put an emphasis on the need for regulatory change or improvement. I suppose my specific question is probably best placed to Edward from DFE. We've seen a lot of press recently around the the poor functioning of our planning system here in Northern Ireland, and we've talked today a lot about the opportunity and seizing the opportunity now, and investors will want certainty around the right decision, but also a prompt decision when it comes to the delivery of the physical infrastructure. And I suppose there is an opportunity now. We know that the Department for Infrastructure are looking at a planning improvement plan, which should hopefully improve how our system operates. We also know that they are reviewing the regional policy for renewable energy in Northern Ireland, and we hope that that will facilitate the targets for 2030. But I suppose what I want to know is, what are DFE doing to really influence that, to influence the regulatory system and to influence it now, because the opportunity for such a change doesn't happen that often. Thank you.
Yeah, that would be best for me then. So a lot of key words that you referenced there: structure, confidence. We have to send the right signals to leverage in the private sector investment, the FDI. And I agree with the point you're making there. Whenever we've been engaging with the business sector across NI, planning responses are actually general planning issues. You know, it's access, it's building on a floodplain, or to specifics. Whenever you think about the hydrogen economy, brings into play the PPC legislation and the environmental impact assessments. And you're correct whenever you reference DFI are responsible for planning. But we're working across the executive at officials level like never before. We also work very closely with DAERA colleagues. I know some of them are in the room. And it's to get that speed, is to expedite this response. I looked on with interest whenever recent strategy developed in GB around economic zones, where like some planning legislation was a bit more relaxed. I'm not saying that that is a policy for Northern Ireland, but I don't know with interest. It's an interesting approach. Might something like that impact general planning issues that we see? It is under DFI's remit, but we are working across the executive to try to expedite.
My question is very, very simple. Can HVO, which is hydro-treated vegetable oil, a renewable diesel, can HVO form a part of the conversation and form a part of the strategy while you're on this journey? Because the journey with hydrogen is a slow journey, it's a very expensive journey, and it's a complex one. And given that there are so many internal combustion engines within our market in Northern Ireland today, in public transport, in transport and logistics, in parcel delivery, in quarrying, mining, construction, HVO represents a 90% reduction in CO2 today. But it's too expensive compared to diesel and requires a rebate coming from government. So my question is, can HVO form a part of the conversation, and can it become a part of the strategy, albeit as a transition solution?
Eddie, I think this one might be for you.
I'm okay to take that.
You're getting a lot of interest.
Ask Eddie, really.
Thank you.
First of all, I thoroughly agree, actually, with what was just said there. Absolutely thoroughly agree. The energy strategy position on this is, the 2020s, the transitional period. A lot of the hydrogen technology that we see coming down the line will not be in mass-produced, commercialized state in the, with enough traction until maybe the 2030s. So how do we get there quickly? Well, e-fuels, HVO, DME, ammonia, anything that can be derived from green hydrogen absolutely is part of the equation, and it's vital for us to move quickly on that. But your company, for example, it's the existing economic operators, the existing expertise in materials handling. Carrying oil is the same as HVO or an e-fuel. Need that, and we must retain that economic balance of our existing skills, our existing infrastructure, until we can turn towards the 2030s whenever the more advanced technology comes into play. But I think even beyond that, the answer to the rural economy decarbonisation, shipping, we need liquid fuels, and the component of sustainable aviation fuel, it will remain liquid. So it's very much a vital part of the equation, absolutely.
Any questions? Feel free to stick your hand up. We've got roving mics in the back. We've got a couple in the front here. Thanks. There's Andrew.
Hello, everybody. Andrew Woods, CEO of Catagen. Brilliant presentations today, and thanks to the panel for putting that together. Two questions, really. So one of the key outputs was the idea of a hydrogen catapult, and it was really great to hear the emphasis on speed, agility, and moving quick. Is there a timeline to install a hydrogen catapult in place and get the support that businesses need? Or when will a timeline be developed until that's a tangible reality?
Thanks. Do you want to maybe touch a bit upon that, Eddie, and then also touch a bit upon timescales for AMIC as well? I think it's linked in there.
Yeah. In terms of delivering catapult within city deals, so the Hydrogen Centre of Excellence, or whatever we want to call it, there is a governance structure, a due diligence process to deliver that. But I kind of feel from the outcome from this research is we don't need to wait until we have that physical centre. If we start talking about in terms of a catalyst, we start bringing together the expertise. Now we actually have the parts that would make the catapult. They exist now. The NIAS, and we talk about AMIC and what is beneath AMIC. Well, the expertise at Queen's in advanced technologies, at the advanced storage, HySafer at Ulster University in terms of hydrogen governance. We have all the components in existence. So if we move forward with, for example, a hydrogen council, we can start to get inertia moving in the economy, and that's kind of my takeaway from today is, yes, there is a timeline for delivery of the centre, but I think we can work outside of that, if you know what I mean, in a sort of virtual context. And there are funding areas that we're working on at the moment. I don't want to go into too much detail on those, but we are working on those.
Okay, thanks.
Can I add on this? I have been, Andrew, as you know, I have been developing AMIC for the past three or 4 years now. And it is a long process to get capability on the ground and to get approvals. Quite rightly, people want to be reassured that you try to do the right thing. But we have assets, as Eddie said, that are available now. We can build on something today. I would like us to have industry partnership in this, to not be seen as a university piece, but I would like people like yourself to be driving the specification for that. It has to be across Northern Ireland with open door for opportunity from HySafer, all the capabilities within the universities to be under one tent. And crucially, we need to really leverage UK capability as well. Because, why I say that? The catapult is a preserved term by government in the UK. You cannot call yourself a catapult unless it's agreed. And I believe the catapults in the UK said there is enough in that space, perhaps. So if Northern Ireland want to create a catapult in hydrogen, somebody high enough need to go physically in number 10, in number 11, and say, we want to do that. And as part of the evidence, we need to make sure that we have the catapults in the UK on site and physically drawing the capability that they have in that process of creating capability in Northern Ireland. I think the evidence is strong, but there is a line of somehow going about it the right way, which is industry-led, collaborative, and across the piece, not only Northern Ireland, but in the rest of the UK. In terms of timescales, perhaps if we can agree the principles and the governance, that's why the council is very important, then we can go about and say, okay, we can actually go through a phase that is a shadow phase. We can almost operate like a catapult, but using the assets we have without having the complete solidified capability. So we could start quickly, but realistically it will take 3 to 5 years to have it up and running.
I just really want to make a final point. Thank you very much, Paul, for your answer. The speed and magnitude in which industry is moving at is phenomenal. The investments that are going in, and the companies are spearheading and leading that. And the emphasis on time is critical if we are to achieve market share at all as a region. And all sort of steps available should be taken to minimise the time to support actually getting technology deployed and demonstrated and a scalable manufacturing supply chain built up. to support the market opportunity, because we're already seeing tremendous market opportunity come at us, and we just really need the support to get to the next stage and exploit that.
May I just add something to that? Firstly, congratulations as well for Catagen on your recent successes. Just to allude to Rob's point as well, on the next steps for further due diligence as well. Well, like during our study and the options evaluation, we looked really at the strategic alignment with the roadmap, cost, risk, and of course, well, potential impact as well, but the ease of implementation as well of the different options. So certainly that is one to consider to get it moving quickly, I would say.
Yep, just, thank you.
Thanks. Chris Brown, Aviation and Mobility Strategy at KPMG. Just pulling in some thoughts that I think Maria mentioned earlier about e-fuels and the conversion costs, i.e. CapEx barriers for sectors to switch from existing fuel reliable uses to hydrogen, and marrying that with the thought that we've seen in our work with aviation. Obviously, you can model by mid-century what ground and aviation transport needs in terms of drop-in fuels versus hydrogen, but its best guess is essentially at this point, right? It's hard to say where it actually ends up. What's the thinking process in terms of future-proofed production assets? So I know some of the oil majors are thinking around sites that can produce hydrogen. They can also capture carbon, or they can go the natural next step, which is create the power to liquid or synthetic fuel, and therefore they're naturally hedged whatever way the market goes. Thanks.
What do you want to take that? Okay, a couple of things spring to mind there. Any kind of fuel must be produced economically, so it's has to be co-located as economically as possible. If hydrogen, you're talking about moving hydrogen at pressure, so we would compress that source. You start spinning forward, and the ultimate energy carrier, you're talking about cryogenic hydrogen. Obviously, aviation as we stand now, it's not an opportunity for cryogenic hydrogen until you start to see dramatic redesigns in airframe. I understand the working on with NASA about the change in airframes, going supersonic without a sonic boom, changes in engine positions and nacelles and all of that. That's decades away. Sustainable aviation fuel, there's a mandate of 10% by 2030. So again, it brings us back to that transitionary period, co-locating economically the best energy production in the best locations. For Northern Ireland, green power from wind, we move forward in a position of offshore as an option. And once you scratch the surface of this, it brings so much additional economic opportunity. There's so much additional fabrication needed around any of this, but it all comes from that fuel statement. So there's no easy, quick answer about the economics of it, but you talk about the e-fuel, whether it be green hydrogen linked to air captured carbon captured from flue gas emissions, HVO, DME, ammonia. There's an entire suite of e-fuels in there, and we have to produce them economically for us to adopt them in the first place. The reports suggest, can we compete, can we not compete on the international stage? At this stage, it's not clear, but us as an economy, we will use those fuels, and we will, with policy, support their enablement.
Yeah, I would like to, thanks. I would like to add on that. So when we look, for example, at other countries' hydrogen strategies and their assessments of how are e-fuels positioned with respect to kind of incumbent fuels, we have seen that whilst with hydrogen, there is already some possibilities of having it towards 2030s, and kind of that is what has been driving some sort of thinking into developing strategies to make that possible, growing towards 2040 and 2050. With e-fuels, the story is a bit different at the moment. So I think the message, and the cost differential is even higher. So I think I agree there is a point of, actually for some sectors, the the substitution would be possible really with the e-fuels and not that much with hydrogen, possibly. But so far, and let's be mindful that we are in the middle of an energy crisis that change assessments because the costs of incumbent fuels that we're observing today are completely different from the ones that we were observing 2 years ago, right, or the last year. But against this background, again, like when we look at international experience, the focus of the discussion is for now hydrogen, because the perspectives are clearer there. For other fuels, say to do it with direct air carbon capture, for example, to do it in a very clean way, still on the agenda, possibly more in the future. To start the process, in any case, let's continue doing investment in R&D. The point is, would we go down the way to putting even an effort into closing reducing the cost gap there? Maybe that comes at the expense of harming the principles that we have been talking about, affordability and competitiveness of that green engine.
Could I just quickly add as well? I think that the question itself highlights just how much uncertainty there is for investors in this area. And it's quite unusual for some economists to recommend central coordination as a requirement in a market. But the whole kind of low carbon hydrogen economy is based on so much uncertainty around both the demand and the supply side, which is really totally different, say, to the renewable electricity world. And therefore, that really just highlights the need for this, for the institutional developments that we've spoken about earlier. This is a kind of a transformation across the value chain, and it's not really possible for investors in one part of the value chain to manage policy-driven risks across other parts of the value chain. That's why we landed on the message on coordination.
Thank you. There's one more question just on this side.
Thank you. David Quinney-Me from Rathlin Island Development and Community Association. Thank you for an excellent morning and very encouraging presentations. I welcome also that question from Nickel Fuels, and I do know there's a conversation going on around transforming maritime fuel, a very significant factor in the market there. Academia, industry-led, government-sponsored, excellent. Can I invite the panel to make a comment on, or more than one, should you wish, on community-led energy development in the hydrogen structure for Northern Ireland's future?
Yep.
Okay, so if we start to look at the community, the nature of NIEN's response to the NIE network, the need for resilience and robustness across our electricity network, that starts bringing into play microclusters, that starts bringing into play a community scheme. You look at Rathlin, and I've seen proposals on Rathlin. And yeah, I think until the network can get up to a point where we have massive amounts of power flowing massively across Northern Ireland, you will see a prevalence of community-led schemes, and you will see that microclustering. But then that also brings into play the strategic interests of biomethane and biogas and AD across Northern Ireland. And it will start being about community. And the way that the capital support set up at the moment, it is just focused on technology. Additionality in some cases, but the community piece, it is technology-led. But we're mindful of that in policy. The previous case paper about the biogas opportunities around Northern Ireland, that really did reflect a community-led clustered approach.
Yeah.
So no, we're cognizant of that.
Any comments from the rest of the panel?
Yes, I think in our presentation, Peter showed 9 recommendations from the roadmap. One of these was develop trust at the bottom. That is for the future. But I had a colleague saying to me, "This is number 1. We need to do it kind of now." And the more application that goes through the due diligence of the community to say, we would like to embrace that, we would like to do that, the better. And in terms of somehow council-led activities, if you look at MEA as an example, they really went for it. They went for hydrogen the past 5 years. And now they have an academy, training people there. So therefore, quite a lot of that thinking has to really be catalyzed in other parts of Northern Ireland. And I would certainly welcome this across the sectors as well. There's agri-tech and agri-food and so on. We need to see that permeating, because hydrogen is going to go, it's not the silver bullet, but it will touch our lives in different ways. So yeah, I don't know if that's an answer, but of course there's funding and how to go about it. It's a lot of issues, but certainly in principle it would be a good thing to do.
Peter, I think you want to add a comment?
Yes, just I suppose in a lot of policy, European policy, the RED Renewable Energy Directive, it's undergoing some amendments currently. Already the community sort of element is a key feature of that policy. Hydrogen will be included as well. And then even support schemes, such as down at the RES support scheme in the Republic of Ireland, community elements are a big focus there as well. So hopefully that will continue up here.
Thank you. Just move to our final question. Mark?
Thank you. Mark Huddleston, Makers Alliance and especially EU Programmes Body. There's been some really interesting discussion and dialogue here and building on some of the questions we've just heard. We're in an energy crisis and arguably now what we've just heard maybe is becoming a wee bit abstract and distant from the reality that business, manufacture, heavy industry and society as a whole is facing, with linkage to government spending being extremely likely to be curtailed to a large extent going forward, which will impact some of the discussion around the potential for R&D spending in Northern Ireland, never mind across the wider UK. So the question is twofold. How do we make this real for business now and for society now, and bridge the gap that we face to some of the opportunity that's been outlined here today? And secondly, how do we build on a more collaborative approach rather than a Northern Ireland only approach here, which seems to be what was the key emphasis today, that we would do something on our own. When we have an energy systems catapult, we have a high value manufacturing catapult, we have a connected places catapult, an offshore wind catapult in the UK. Why do we need something that is a specific catapult to Northern Ireland?
Do you want me to start? So the two parts of that question, I think the timing thing is an interesting one, because obviously there's so much work to do in order to make hydrogen a reality. We can't say here's a quick win, other than consolidating the interest in Northern Ireland and articulating what we can do and what differentiates ourselves. Very, as of today, we can do that. The report helps us do that, right? The challenge, to come to your second part, is how we articulate that. Okay, and I think always in Northern Ireland, there's a tension between catering for our own needs and talking amongst ourselves and articulating what we can do to the rest of the UK and the world. Okay, we can always improve in doing that, but I think this is the first step. If we can get a clear message as to what the differentiating advantage in this particular space is, we can then go and clearly articulate it to the Innovate UK Catapult Network, to UK Gov in terms of a wider strategy, and say, look, we understand what you're doing UK-wide, or even Ireland-wide, or even Europe-wide in the world. But this is what we are doing. It's very specific, it's very clear, and it differentiates from what everybody else is doing in a complementary way. And I think if we get that message clear, leverage the existing interactions we have with UK government, understanding what their strategy is, which I think Paul alluded to in regard to the Catapult Network and its ambitions, which are largely blue hydrogen, right? I think if we can get that message clearly and articulate it, then we do have the opportunity. But Mark, we do need to articulate it clearly, but we need to get a clear message as well.
Can I add on this? Mark, a few years back when we said, okay, there's all this investment in the Catapult Network, how many employees are in this land, in this piece? 1 or 2? Investment, 5,000 staff across the UK, 2 in Northern Ireland? Not good enough. So that's why we need to make it a business to focus around something, then build capability, fully being cognizant that money will be actually not easy to get in the future. We'll have a fiscal issue. And we need to make sure that we're using what we have in a way exactly as as Rob articulated here, but I think there is a good rationale we can build around getting some capability here.
I think I'd just add a bit there as well. I think what's crucial here is whenever the wind asset grew from whatever 10% in 2008 up to 48%, a point that was made previously of Richard on an event was that we missed that crucial fabrication opportunity. We missed that manufacturing economic growth opportunity. We are at the cusp of a new green industrial revolution. We are shifting our hydrocarbon-based economies to something entirely different with an entirely new fuel and asset base. That is eventually where we'll get to. And then there's the economic opportunity about the transition of that. We must make, we must fabricate, we must construct. And I am aware of so much IP in Northern Ireland. Much of this is exportable, much of it is a product. And we want to be at the stage where we support that to grow. We want to scale up the industrial manufacturing capability. There's a recognition of we have another chance here. Let's grasp it. On the fuel side, on the green gas side, but on the hard, tangible metal, meeting metal, let's grasp that opportunity. So look, that is cognizant within the FE and Invest NI, and it's not my place to dig too far into that today, but the discussions are ongoing.
Yeah, I would certainly agree with you, Eddie. And I think, the role of Makers Alliance is so important in understanding that, and manufacturing businesses and where they can pivot to take advantage of these new opportunities and the technology innovation and ultimately that deployment and that exportable opportunity. Just before we close today, I just want to say a massive thank you to the speakers today. We wouldn't be here without you. So thank you so much. And thank you for sharing all your thoughts and your insights and the reports. And I just want to make sure that, everybody in the room gets the opportunity to network with our speakers, network with each other at the lunch we've got next. And just before we close up, I just want to let you know that there are copies of the Matrix report in the foyer. Pick one up. It's also available online. And the presentations today have been recorded and will be going up on the Invest NI website shortly. There are feedback forms on your seats. And particularly, I'm quite interested to see, did you find this interesting? What other events would you like us to run? And what other topics are of interest to you? So if we don't get your feedback, we can't run it. So please do let us know. And a huge thank you to everybody in the audience that came today. Absolutely fantastic turnout and great to see the interest. And just a big thank you from everybody on the panel as well. So enjoy your lunch and I'll close it there.